Unlike other RPGs where gold can be useful to get the bare necessities and then becomes worthless after a while, in Guild Wars 2, gold is essentially the end game because of how the economy works. Most things in-game can be bought from the trading post or crafted using components bought from the trading post. Of course, there are soulbound items that require you to go on epic journeys to obtain them, but there are also people who would gladly carry you through that process for a payout. On top of this, the main monetization method of Guild Wars 2, besides selling expansions, is selling skins, and skins can be bought with gold because you can convert gold into the premium currency, gems. This means that you can essentially buy any skin as long as you put in the time to farm gold. Because Guild Wars 2 is a horizontal progression game, it means that for some players, the endgame content is finding the highest gold per hour farms, and by default, the best gold per hour farm is a minimum wage job where you spend your paycheck on gems since you can convert gems to gold. But this isn't a feasible option for obvious reasons, and not everyone wants to optimize every single detail to get gold because the purpose of playing the game is to have fun, not to get gold. Getting gold can be a means to an end, but ultimately you want to have fun while playing the game and not spend all day farming for some pixels. I believe this is why many people quit the game because they get sucked up in optimal farming methods and don't explore the more fun ways to play. So that is the purpose of this video, to let you know the most fun and efficient methods of obtaining gold, based on my experience accruing tons of gold over time, so that you can decide if that activity sounds worth your time based on how fun it sounds, or how efficient it is at making gold over time. I will be also rating each method on a scale of 1 to 10, based on how fun I think it is, how efficient it is at getting gold, and how easy it is to do. Because if something is easy, it means you can do it for longer, or do other things at the same time, giving you more value on your time spent. And many people prefer to farm while watching a movie or listening to a podcast in the background. So the best farms are not necessarily the best gold per hour, but something you can do for a while without burning out or using excessive energy. If you enjoy this content, please remember to like and subscribe. And let's start with one of the best ways to get gold. It's of course Fractals of the Mists. This is a 5-man dungeon that you can only do at max level, and you need ascended gear and agony infusions to progress to the higher levels, which means it's quite an investment to get into them. But once you do get into the higher levels, you can find groups that do these daily. Try to find groups in the LFG around reset time, which you can find the timer for the fractal reset on the daily achievements tab. Make sure you have enough agony resistance before looking for T4 Fractals groups, and not the challenge modes, because even though the CMs can be quite lucrative, you'll need to be way more experienced to do those as well. If you can, then you don't need me to tell you what to do. Completing the set of daily T4 Fractals every day will reward you with all of the previous tiers of the daily, so if you can find a group quickly that does decent damage and knows the Fractals, you can get it done within 30 minutes. These daily fractal chests have boxes and keys you can open them with, and inside is some junk you can sell to merchants for quite a bit of gold, and potentially some ascended items which will save you money in the long run since you won't need to craft those if you get them from Fractals. If you need a guide on Fractals, then check the link in the description for more information on how to get into them. But while Fractals does take some time to level up and prepare for, they can be pretty quick and give a good chunk of gold each day. So in terms of efficiency, it's a 9 out of 10. However, this is so efficient because it's time gated per day. So if you want to farm more, you have to wait until the next day. In terms of fun, Fractals are one of the best game modes out there because the diverse encounters and dungeon-like feel that changes the experience. It's definitely a 9 out of 10 for fun, especially because if they become too easy after a while, you can start doing the CMs for a bit more challenge. Fractals requires other players, which means you need to do them at a specific time when others are playing, and they're engaging enough that you can fail them if you go on autopilot. So in terms of ease, they're a 3 out of 10, meaning they are quite difficult to do, at least in comparison to the other methods in this video. The next method is how I made plenty of gold, and it's by crafting legendaries. Essentially, you make yourself a legendary weapon, then you deprive yourself the dopamine rush of binding that weapon to your account, and instead sell it for gold on the trading post. You can't do this with legendaries that are account bound, but the first set and the Aurene legendaries you can trade to other players. The amount of investment you put into crafting a legendary is a lot of time and effort as well as gold, but the return in gold could be deemed as good use of your time. The only issue is that you need a good amount of capital to craft a legendary and a good amount of time, so this is not a quick way to get gold, but a great way to sustain it over time. The legendary market requires a bit of decision making because some legendaries are too difficult to sell if they're unpopular, and others are not worth it to sell because they're too popular and the sell isn't worth the price. So getting all the materials that are used in any legendary is a safe bet. Then decide to get the unique items to crafting that specific legendary when you decide which one is the best value based on the price. Also, you of course want to list it to sell instead of instantly filling a buy order on the TP because you spent that much time making it, so you want to get full value. There are also Discord servers that are designed to help players trade with each other while avoiding the trading post tax, so you both get better deals cutting out the middleman. But to me, the benefit of this gold making method is that you can do it completely alone and don't need to interact with others, so you can do it at any time of the day and at your own pace. It can be fun creating a legendary as well because you have various activities to fulfill and resources to obtain, which can make it feel like an epic quest. Map completion is the biggest hurdle for many when completing a legendary, but if you do it bit by bit and pace yourself, it isn't that bad. Map completion is also the perfect activity to do while multitasking and watching a video in the other monitor because it's so low effort and investment. Getting some of the other materials might require time-gated events, so to truly get the most efficiency out of crafting and selling legendaries, you want to plan out your process by working on the time-gated materials early, and then when you hit the wall, you work on map completion or the tradable materials. So in a way, the difficulty of crafting legendaries comes from the initial investment of leveling crafting professions, buying recipes, and finding your most efficient strategy for crafting them. But once you do your first one, the next few will be much easier and efficient. Also, if you end up wanting to keep your legendaries, you can always make 2 for each one you keep, which should sustain your gold enough to be able to keep crafting them. So as far as gold efficiency, I rate legendary crafting a 7 out of 10 because of how many different factors there are that can ruin the efficiency, and unlike Fractals, which is a steady income every day, the legendary might take a few to several months, depending on how often you play, to make it, which can for some people be too long of an investment. But it does convert a lot of the account-bound materials you have into gold, which gives you value on resources that you'd otherwise have been letting go to waste. For fun factor, I give it a 10 out of 10 because I enjoy the diversity that it provides in gameplay and the meaningful journey you can experience while making it. And if you get tired after selling Twilight number 5, you can always switch to another weapon. However, in terms of ease, it's only a 5 out of 10 because there are so many decisions to make in the process that it can be overwhelming mentally to try to efficiently strategize the process without mistakes. While it does take a lot of time and resources to invest in this method, it's also very easy to work towards because it's mostly open world content that is always accessible. That is, of course, besides some of the items you need like Gift of the Mist from competitive modes, which can be tricky to get for some people who don't enjoy PvP. However, it's still pretty accessible since those materials can be gained even when losing. Which brings us to the third gold making method, which is just ranked PvP. Unlike other game modes where you get rewarded in materials or other things that represent gold or need to be processed in some way, PvP rewards mostly just raw gold. There are reward tracks that give materials, but the ranked pip system gives gold for wins and losses, and eventually those pips add up and you get the reward chests with just gold in them. You may be thinking that you need to be good at PvP to get value from this method because winning a match grants 10 pips while losing only 3, but you don't need to be good. In fact, there are tons of casual PvPers who play ranked just for gold. The reason is because if you are bad at PvP, you'll just be lower rank and you get the same rewards as you do in platinum as you do in silver. You'll just have a better win ratio in silver than you do in platinum. And while you do get more pips in platinum than you do in silver, it's only like 1 or 2 difference. At first the rewards are a bit low, but when you get the final Byzantium chest each season, which is the highest reward, you get a good amount of gold, and then the rewards stay the same instead of starting over. This means the more you play each season, the more you can farm this Byzantium chest for the better gold gains. So the best strategy is to play for fun and casually, and sure, you'll try to win, but don't get too heated about winning or losing. And if you don't like toxic teammates or tryhards flaming you or blaming you, then just make a chat channel that removes all chat and turn that on when entering into PvP. The main benefit here is that PvP delivers gold to your wallet without much thought. All you need to do is press the Q button and play the match. You don't need to think about gold per hour, where you want to go for your next daily, or about finding other players to group with. Just run at other players and fight them, and you'll get gold afterwards. Another benefit is that one of the PvP currencies, the purple mist shards, is currently very high value because PvP is not a very popular mode, and you need these to craft legendaries. So the demand is still pretty high, but the supply is low. This could change, but regardless, the gold you get is still very nice. So in terms of gold efficiency, ranked PvP is a 5 because the gold isn't bad, but it takes some time to ramp up to the Byzantium chest. Then how fast you get a match will depend on queue timers, which can be shorter or longer depending on the time you play at. If you play in the middle of the night, you can get 5 to 10 minute queues. Evening and afternoon for your server will be more interactive, but you can do other things while in PvP queues, like another gold farm, so this isn't that big of an issue. As far as fun goes, PvP matches can be very one-sided, which can get boring sometimes, or they can be very close matches that are the peak of fun gameplay. This also just depends on your mindset in PvP. If you play to improve and try out new playstyles, it can be a lot of fun, but if you play for ego and rating, it'll be frustrating and ultimately unfulfilling. So I give it an 8 out of 10 if you play with the right mindset. Now for ease, I give it a 7 out of 10 because while PvP is inherently more challenging the further you progress up the ranks, that's entirely optional. Also, your win ratio will always gravitate towards 50%. So even if you're dropping rating, you'll start winning eventually when your rating evens out. And even though the only required part of PvP is just queuing up and participating, you do need to participate the entire time because you shouldn't AFK in a PvP match. Although I do see some pretty pathetic people doing that when they don't get their way. Anyways, the next method is daily material gathering or crafting. The main appeal to this method is how little time it takes. There are many different ways to do this, and the most effective ones will change depending on the markets. But the main idea is getting high value materials by logging in on an alt character or any character that can immediately gather. So for example, there's a ring of trees in Malkor's Leap by a statue of Melandru, and you can gather around 20 logs of elderwood very quickly, then log back out and do something else until it respawns. And maybe elderwood is not expensive right now, but if a legendary weapon is released that needs a lot of wood, the price will spike and you can sell it for more. You can also do this by planting your characters at the end of jumping puzzles right next to the reward chest and just log in every day to loot the chest. My issue with this is that I no longer have access to that character to play the game with, unless I want to bring them back to that spot later, and then the efficiency of the time spent per gold gained is not really there anymore. So this is not the best unless you have tons of alts you might never play again. Also, if you join a guild that is max level, then you can gather in their guild hall once a day, or find a player with a maxed out home instance to farm their home nodes. The method that I prefer for this is just crafting the daily ectoplasm refinement materials, the glob of elder spirit residue, the lump of mithrilium, and the spool of thick Elonian cord. These are account bound materials that can only be crafted once per day, and they're used to make other crafting materials that you can sell. Their materials might cost 1 gold to make, but the final product can be sold for 2 or more gold, or whatever the current prices are. Essentially, this will be a quick few gold that you can make once per day, and all you need to do is have the crafting discipline leveled up and sit there for a few seconds at a crafting station, which is easily accessed in many places. In terms of gold efficiency, this is a 10 out of 10 because you spend almost no time doing this, and you get a decent amount of gold. It does have a limit of once per day, so you won't get rich doing this, but it definitely adds up over time. Is it fun to do? Probably not, so I give it a 2 out of 10, but luckily this isn't much of a burden due to how fast it is. How easy is it? Probably a 10 out of 10 because it takes almost no effort to set up, and even less to continue reaping the rewards by just logging in. Then this next method is perhaps not the most popular, but it is old school grinding by killing mobs over and over. Guild Wars 2 is designed where this type of behavior is actually not promoted because loot tables have diminishing returns that give you less loot the more you kill a mob, and maps generally have sparsely spread out mobs, making it inefficient to focus on them. But there are still plenty of players that might have played RuneScape or Black Desert Online back in the day who just enjoy mindlessly farming mobs. I personally wish there was more support for this as well because the combat of Guild Wars 2 is fleshed out in longer fights where you have to optimize your mobility and skill usage to kill mobs faster while traveling through the map. But there are actually some places in game that support this type of gameplay, and there are ways to get around the diminishing returns. The key is also stacking Magic Find, which is a stat that improves your loot table rewards, giving you more rare items more often. You can get Magic Find permanently from achievement points or consuming Essences of Luck, which you get from salvaging loot. You can also stack up buffs that give you a duration of Magic Find buffs like the Om Nom Berry Bar or the Chocolate Om Nom Berry Cream food buffs. And then if you have boosters from birthday rewards or Black Lion chests, you can use those to get even more Magic Find. Then find a good farming spot like the Destroyers in Ember Bay, which drop fangs, the Centaurs in Lake Dork, which drop leather, or bags from the Champions in Frostgorge Sound. Either way, what you decide to farm depends on what is currently worth to farm, either because of low supply or high demand at the moment, and there needs to be an area in-game with a formation of enemies that can give you constant enemies to fight, with a build that has high burst and mobility so you can kill things as quickly as possible, like the Pistol Deadeye. If you farm one area too much, you may start getting diminishing returns, so it's a good idea to have one character to do the farm with that has your boosters and Magic Find food. Then once you feel like you aren't getting as much loot, swap characters to preserve your buff durations and go do another farm. Mob farming is a 6 out of 10 for gold efficiency since there are limits and not always is a particular farm lucrative based on the material markets, but it's a 9 out of 10 for fun because the combat system of Guild Wars 2 gets fully fleshed out, and if you like discovering new places in the game, it'll bring you to areas that you may have never had a reason to go to before. In terms of ease, it's an 8 out of 10 because you can just mindlessly kill mobs and generally you'll be successful even if you aren't the most optimal pathing or build. For this reason, and the same reason that Magic Find isn't an amazing stat, this method is generally not the main way you want to farm because the next method is how Guild Wars 2 wants you to farm, and it's events, which have static rewards regardless of your Magic Find or other things. Meta events are map-wide encounters that spawn at specific times of the day on a 2-hour cycle, allowing players to group up for them to get the big reward chest given at the end. You can know which events are going on by typing /ET or event timers in game, which will bring you to the Event Timers Guild Wars 2 official wiki. Here you can see which events are nearing their final boss stage, and you can go to these maps and help complete the events, which will oftentimes give an extra reward for completing it once per day. Sometimes these boxes give time-gated rewards you'll need to craft legendaries, which can also be sold to other players. For this method, you'll want to complete as many meta events as possible while not repeating a specific map because you won't get the daily chest twice. Most players skip the Path of Fire meta events except the Pinata, but the Heart of Thorns and End of Dragons metas have plenty of people doing them still even after many years, and some of these meta events will have an extremely rare drop like an infusion that you can sell for thousands of gold on the trading post, so there's a chance that you could become instantly rich. In terms of gold efficiency, it depends on how efficient you are with reaching the maps before the boss is finished, how fast the bosses are being completed, which can depend on the time of the day, so it's a 7 out of 10. It's an 8 out of 10 though for fun because you get to see the big cinematic boss fights at the climax of these meta events. And it's an 8 out of 10 for ease because all you need to do is teleport to where the event is located and follow the group of players doing the events. Even if you die, it's unlikely you will fail the event since others will be helping and you'll still get credit for it as long as you participate, and the bar is extremely low for participation. Now the last method is probably useful to everyone, and that is to stop wasting money or wasting time. If you make tons of materials while farming, but then it takes several minutes to process those materials, that time should be counted in your gold per hour statistics. This is why there are some deceptive farms that look like there are a lot of gold per hour, then the person presenting them uses some third-party website to see how their account value went up. That isn't liquid gold, and if liquid gold is what you want, then there are extra steps involved that need to be accounted for when determining the gold per hour value, because otherwise you could be farming more materials instead of processing them. This is why the PvP farm is nice because you get exactly what gold you see without extra steps or fluctuating market values that you need to research to optimize your gains. But let's get into the ways that you can minimize how much time and therefore how much gold you waste by inefficient behaviors. First of all, waypointing only costs a couple of silvers, but depending on how far you travel, especially from and to Cantha, can be very expensive over time. The Arborstone portal scroll, which you get from the End of Dragon story, can be nice for traveling to Cantha, and if you want to get back to Tyria from Cantha, you can go to the PvP lobby from anywhere using the PvP panel, then take the portal from there to Lion's Arch. Here in Lion's Arch, you can travel to any other major city and even the Wizard's Tower and Arborstone. The issue is that you have to go through multiple loading screens and traveling to the portals can take about a minute. If you can make a couple silver in a minute or so, then it's not worth it to use these portals at all because time is equivalent to money. Just waypoint where you want to go instead of complicating things. Then you have more time to make gold. Another way people waste money is due to the feeling of missing out when there's a new gem store skin. Converting gold to gems is fine because that's one of the main reasons people farm gold. They want those juicy gem store skins. However, gem store prices fluctuate throughout the week. This means that the gem conversion prices will be the worst value on Tuesdays or on big patch days when a new gem store skin is released because that's when everyone is deciding they want gems to buy that new skin. Instead, you should be preemptively converting gems on Sunday or Thursday or weeks after the last patch. Then if you decide you want something, it will be cheaper than if you decided to buy it and then immediately converted the gems. This also applies to any new trend. If you feel the need to get an item when the materials are expensive, then you'll pay extra. Instead, you want to sell those new materials, wait a month or two, and then buy them back and get the item you wanted later for much cheaper. Some delay of gratification and forward thinking is required here, but in the long run, it'll save you plenty of gold and allow you to get more stuff in general, rather than less stuff but sooner. And of course, people spend a lot of time managing their inventory, and while it is worth it to do so, there's time wasted when you could be doing something else. The most efficient way to manage your inventory is actually to not manage your inventory, and this is because there are bulk methods of managing it, like right-clicking on a salvage kit and using salvage all, then clicking the deposit all materials button. The more items you salvage each time, the less times you need to press it. So you should invest in large inventory bags so you can go for longer without your inventory becoming full, and focus on managing your inventory only during downtime, like in between events or when you're waiting to be revived. Not wasting time or money is a 10 out of 10 for gold efficiency because it essentially optimizes everything you do. Is it fun though? Most would say it's a 4 out of 10 because you have to be strict and patient, which most people don't necessarily want to be when playing a video game, which they do after their job or school day is over, but to some it can be part of the puzzle that is fun for them to do. In terms of ease, it's a 5 out of 10 because it requires some decision making to be optimal with your time and money, and although you can form automatic habits, it's still not the easiest thing to do compared to the other methods. So those are the 7 best ways to get gold in Guild Wars 2. I didn't include things like World vs. World, dungeons, or strike missions because I just don't think those are in the top 7. But there are definitely other ways to play the game. This is just a suggestion for those who aren't sure what to do. Ultimately, you'll find something you enjoy doing in game to get you money, or you won't and just be poor because that's completely fine too. Also, you don't need to do just one of these methods because that can get boring fast no matter what you're doing. Combine a couple of these methods together. For example, if you're crafting legendaries and need to do map completion can be mind-numbing, so you do map completion while queuing up for ranked PvP. You also need to complete meta events for the unique materials required for crafting a legendary, so you do the daily meta events for a few maps, but while waiting for one of the meta events to start, you get some efficiency on your downtime by going and doing your daily gathering and crafting. As you can see, gold farming is not really about finding the best farm in game and repeating that ad nauseum, because people who do that often get sick of the game and quit. It's about finding a variety of fun things to do and trying to solve the puzzle of how you can best use your time to get the skins that you want. Or maybe you just want to stick to doing Silver Waste Farm 24/7. That's up to you, but hopefully this video helped you. If it did or you enjoyed it, then please like the video, subscribe for more as usual, and become a channel member to support me further. And I will see you all next time.